So, Rajiv, a lot of times interviewers ask, like the first question they ask is when we get into the room, tell me about yourself. If I have written everything about me in my resume, a lot of students want to ask this question. What should they tell? They should say the same things as they have written in the resume, or should they not write one or two things in the resume so that this question can be answered? What should they do?
Good question, and I like the way you put it across.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Victory Point. My name is Pranjal Jain, and today we have HR with us, that is Rajiv Ryan. He has been working for top tech companies around the world for over 10 years, and he's here to share his experiences with us. So listen to him very carefully. So HRs have rejected us, they have selected us. So let's hear it from him why they do that and how should we prepare so that we don't get rejected. So welcome Rajiv. Thank you so much for taking out the time to speak with us, and thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks so much, Pranjal. The pleasure is mine, and thank you for having me on this show.
All right. So, can you just introduce yourself a little bit to the audience?
Sure. So, my name is Rajiv Ryan. I've been a recruiter since 2013, which is about 10 years. I started my career at an agency. Then I moved to a consulting company and worked with two big tech names, and I'm currently with a startup. So, most of my experience has been in hiring tech talent. I also had a little bit of experience in hiring non-tech talent, but primarily my background has been hiring for tech.
All right. So the burning question our audience have is they are trying repeatedly to get into different tech companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft. They send their resumes. A lot of time they don't even get a call back. When they get a call back, they're not able to clear the rounds. Even after clearing the technical rounds, even after going through all the coding rounds, they do not make it through the PI or the HR round. So, what tips do you have? How do you boil it down? What should a student prepare?
Good question, and glad to know that this is like a boiling question or like a top question. So let me answer your question in pieces, right? Like the way you broke it down. So firstly, let's talk about getting the attention of somebody or getting the attention of a recruiter from any company for that matter. So in today's world, the way you get the attention of somebody is either through a job site like Naukri.com and many others, or it is through your LinkedIn profile. Or I would even say maybe your GitHub profile or your Stack Overflow profile. But I think for all practicality purposes, LinkedIn is probably the best way to go about it, right? So when I talk about LinkedIn, what I would recommend students to do is add as much as content, relevant content to their profiles, which would help recruiters, HRs, and companies get the context needed from your profile, right? So there's a lot of over information happening today. So like information is vast and very easily accessible as well. So my recommendation is calling out your main achievements, calling out any kind of competition that you've won with respect to, let's say, if you're applying for a coding interview or a coding job, with respect to that, any kind of talks which you have given, any kind of webinars which you have given, any kind of work which you have done, which is public, anything you've contributed to open source, all of these things give a lot of signals and indicators to HRs and recruiters when they look at your profile, because you come across as somebody who's also contributed and passionate about your work, right? And another thing which you can do is also keep like you there's a way in which you can attach your resume to your LinkedIn profiles that people can, I mean, when recruiters view it, either you can do it by adding a link and calling it out on in your summary, or you can do it in terms of uploading it as an image file or a PDF. There are multiple ways to do it, so make sure you are calling that out in your profile. And the third part thing which I'll also say is uh, I mean, write your LinkedIn profile in. You don't need to be as formal as the way you write your CV. You can definitely be creative and funky, and that's also good. But make but have your LinkedIn profile in such a way that people take you seriously is what I would say. So
So
that's the first part of your question on how do I get people's attention.
correct.
Right. Coming to the second part of the question on like I am if I understand correctly, is this your question? I'm clearing all the technical rounds, but when it comes to after that, I am not able to clear it. Is that your question?
Correct. Yeah, that's the question. Yeah.
Okay. So this can be for multiple reasons, right? Like one of the things which can come across is maybe your intent is right, but because of the things you say, it comes across like as a cultural problem or an attitude problem. So the way you can course correct this is like either you have a mentor and you have those conversations with them, and your mentor can be like anyone, your classmate, your senior, someone you trust. That's probably the most easiest way I would look at going about this. The second part of it can also be, like sometimes you may be also overqualified for the particular company. This can happen, right? It depends on which company you're talking to. Maybe you're they are looking for someone not with this kind of personality trait or this kind of characteristic. So that can be reason number two, right? And the honest truth, and this has happened, I don't think this is just a tech thing, and this is a universal thing. Sometimes the job is not just for you. So you have this thing of everything goes well, but for some reason or the other, like the last set of rounds don't go well, and this happens, and it's most often or not your mistake. Maybe like for all you know, that there can be something like maybe the position goes away, or uh, the priorities of the company changes. So there are multiple factors which happen over here. So also what my advice to folks who reach the stage is like to do what you need to do, which is within your span of control, and hope for the best. So that would be my advice.
All right. Okay. So basically, you need to get the attention of the interviewer with a good opening line, with a good LinkedIn profile. And then after you have played the interviews, the coding rounds, you get to the PI, you say what you actually have to say, and you hope for the best. That's the best you can do. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Like there's no need for you to fake it or try to be someone who you're not, because then like even if let's say you portray a kind of personality which the company is looking for, but that's not who you are, you wouldn't be enjoying work once you join, and you'd be doing injustice to both parties.
Correct. Correct. Great, that's a great insight, I would say. So the next thing is one thing is has become very popular. That's a 5 second rule. Somebody says it's a 7 second rule. Somebody says it's a 10 second rule. So there is a job on a portal, let's say, and there are thousands of candidates that have applied for that particular job. So an HR would have, I think, a few minutes or maybe a few seconds to have a look at the resume. Is this a reality? And if this is a reality, what to write in the resume so that an HR would feel that we are qualified enough in the first 5-10 seconds that the HR has to read the resume.
So if your question is specifically for folks who are fresh out of college or folks who have like 0 to 2 years of experience, the answer is yes. It does not take, I think, more than maybe 10 to 12 seconds max to max to screen a CV, specifically in this category. And if you're looking at software engineering tech, right? So that is how it is. So what I would recommend writing is the first thing is obviously like if you're a software developer or a coder, any kind of coding competition or hackathon that you've won, you would need to call that out in your achievements on the first page, right? Like the bigger the competition, the more the weightage it's given. So any kind of, because that's also an achievement,
Yeah,
uh,
correct.
right? So please do call that out. The second thing I would also recommend is your open source contributions, be it if it is like something on GitHub or anything which you have tweaked, any kind of contribution which you have done, any kind of bug which you have solved. So please do call that out. And if you are active on GitHub or Stack Overflow, please do write your profile, the links of your profiles over there. Maybe you want to like have a mini portfolio apart from your CV, or like if you have a website, that could also help. But please do call this out, because the reason for calling this out is, right, so the logic of going behind a good software engineer is that you can write good software, and while your CV says so, this is also kind of proof that you have done some work and projects, right? So do call these things out. I think like they definitely help. And the third part is, and this can be a little bit more for folks with 0 to 2 years versus folks from college. If you can add a particular metric to your roles and responsibility section, that would also really call out and show a lot of things. What I mean by this is, instead of saying that I write I write code, or I develop software in Java or Python. If you can talk about, because you wrote so much of code, what was the problem, what was the your solution, and what was the result. So the end result can be something very simple, as maybe even like increase my my contribution helped ship the feature, let's say, um, probably uh, maybe 20 days earlier than expected, or my contribution helped improve the efficiency of this software by X, or my contribution indirectly helped improve the sales for this particular product,
All right.
um, or my contribution helped improve the user experience, or the customer experience, whoever were using this product or software, right? So like like what I would recommend is, for this is for any role, right? Like if you can call out what was the problem, what was my solution, and what was the result, that also gives a lot of quantifiable content to the person who's reviewing your resume, and it will definitely stand out because you're being very specific on what kind of problems you've solved.
All right. So I think you're saying that you have to mention the problem, then you have to mention your action, and finally also write down what the result was, so that it
Yeah,
is clear as to what you did and what you achieved.
correct.
Correct. All right, great. Okay. So there is something called as a star approach to answer questions. Have you heard about it?
Yes, very much. In fact, um, couple of companies I worked at did use this as well, and that's where I learned this. It's a very good technique, because you're leading on from one place to the other. So I'm a fan of this approach as well, and it's a good way to dig deeper and get more data from the candidate.
All right. Great. So, like you said, that we should highlight if we have participated in a hackathon, something like GSOC or something of that sort, or we have contributed to open source. But I have come across a lot of candidates who have not participated in anything, who have not contributed to open source, yet they have managed to get into good companies. So, if you have students who have not done that and they are trying to get into these companies, what should they write? What should they do?
So again, what I would say is, it's not a mandatory or a must have, because like I don't think like anyone can have like 100% of what any recruiter is looking at. So rule of thumb is that, like, it's unrealistic to expect somebody who will tick 10 out of 10 of what a recruiter is looking for in any company, right? So assuming if you have not won any hackathon or contributed, what I can say is, like, if you assuming you have work experience, you would have definitely solved complex problems in your current organization, which you can call out. So going back to my previous point, that is one. The second piece is like, why, like, even if you have not done any kind of competitions, what you can do is, like, because open source is free to the world, right? And like probably it's something which anybody can contribute to. So if you have not done it, probably it's time to at least explore and see what is over there.
All right.
Uh, right? Like, and like, so some, like, this is a very controversial topic which I'm going to talk about again. So I'm not going to share any opinion, but like, even like sites like, if you go to any competitive coding site like Lead Code or Code Forces, or
Correct.
any of these sites, and maybe try to solve problems, or use it like as a hobby in terms of like a game in terms of to compete with others and self develop and call that out, that is also okay. Again, it's not like a very like definitive way of saying that the person is amazing or not, but it at least gives some kind of indication that this person is putting in the effort.
Correct. Totally. Totally. I totally agree with this point that if you have to put in some extra effort, if you have to shine above all the other candidates, you have to have something extra. And
Yeah.
having a good coding profile or contributing to open source would be a great way to highlight your resume. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Rajiv, a lot of times interviewers ask, like the first question they ask is when we get into the room, tell me about yourself. If I have written everything about me in my resume, a lot of students want to ask this question. What should they tell? They should say the same things as they have written in the resume, or should they not write one or two things in the resume so that this question can be answered? What should they do?
Good question, and I like the way you put it across. So my, I'm going to answer this question this way. If you notice communication through WhatsApp, communication through email, communication through ping, communication through text versus a phone call versus a face-to-face conversation, the same message which you're conveying in all three modes can come across very differently and can have very different meanings, specifically if you're not in front of the person face to face, right? Because when you're writing, the tone is not taken into context, the intensity is not taken into context. Like there are a lot of other your facial expressions, your body language, none of it takes is taken into context. So the purpose of this question is number one, to check if you're able to articulate your thoughts, articulate your expressions, share what your brain is thinking with the interviewer. So that's the main goal for this. So there's actually nothing wrong in repeating what is there in your CV. There's also nothing wrong, and it would be great to always have like a couple of points which are not on your CV, because what I've also seen is that one very common question which sometimes people like to probe upon is, tell me something which is not on your CV as well.
Yeah.
So when they say tell me like introduce yourself or tell me something about yourself, if you're a student, you can talk about the fundamentals, right? Like how you would introduce yourself to a stranger at an event, or how you would introduce yourself to anyone. You can tell them about your background. You can tell them about your education, why you took up this particular course, what are you looking to do in the future, where your interests lie, where your professional interests lie. Be it like, do you see yourself as a machine learning expert, or do you see yourself in artificial intelligence, or do you see yourself in big data, or do you see yourself in doing a lot of infrastructure work? So you can talk about that, and it's also good for you to talk about what you do outside of work. And the reason for this is like it's good to showcase that you have some kind of hobby, some kind of interest outside your regular work, because that can personally I've used that to keep myself motivated. I've used that to keep myself engaged, and when I have a bad day, like that's my source which I go to. So you can have a quick 5-minute summary of this. No harm in having in repeating what is there in your CV. And the goal of this is just to check if you're able to articulate your thoughts and express yourself.
All right. So I think what you have just said will greatly benefit our viewers. And I want all the viewers to just mark this thing and remember this thing the next time you enter a interviewer's room. Okay? So Rajiv, one more thing that was very prominent was how important is internship and project for a fresher? If there are students who do not have that in their resume, is it possible to create a resume without that, or they should as quickly as possible make some projects and put it into their resumes?
Got it. So internships and projects are two different ball games altogether, right? I'll start with the internship piece. So if you can get an internship, nothing like it, because the advantage you'll have is while it's not like full-time work, it is an internship. You'll get to see how companies work, be it a startup or be it a typical corporate company. So you do get that exposure. You will understand how things work. You will understand various processes and systems. So if you can get something, if you can get an internship at a good company, please do it.
Okay.
And I'll come to if you can't a bit later,
Mm.
right? Um,
Yep.
Now, let's say if you're not able to do it for multiple reasons, let's say I mean, the market was bad, or for some reason you were not able to get an opportunity, it's okay. That's fine. It's not the end of the world. It's obviously something which is nice to have, but in case if you have not got it, try to compensate with it by doing any of the other stuff which I called out previously. So like I said, it's very difficult to find somebody who's like 10 on 10 and who ticks
Right.
all the boxes which the company is looking for or which you are looking for. So assuming if you do not have an internship experience or you never had the opportunity to do so, make up for it by open source, make up for it by you know participating in hackathons, participating and trying to win them. Right, participating is one piece of it, but trying to win it is another piece of it.
Okay.
You can also try to like you can maybe start by going to meetups and then eventually work your way to giving talks at meetups and contributing to meetups and events as well. So you can definitely do that, but it's obviously nice to have, like it's a good sign.
Correct.
And speaking of projects, right, so when you talk about projects, there are two things which can happen here. One is your typical project which you submit in your college, um, right? Like you most likely you would pair up with 2 to 3 people and then submit it during your final
Major and
year.
the minor projects. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is okay and that's good. It's a good start to have. But apart from that, like I think like the opportunities today, specifically with all of this, with a lot of stuff being virtual and remote, there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of work, right?
Correct.
So if you can maybe you know work with someone and like be it if you're getting paid for it or if you're even if you're not getting paid for it, if you can try to collaborate and contribute with someone on it, go for it.
Okay.
um right, but yeah, I know, and I would go back to this point of figure out what you want to do in your career. If like let's say if you want to specialize in a particular area, right, I'm just giving an example. Let's say you want to specialize in Android development. Try to get projects or try to
Correct.
collaborate and learn from projects which work with Android. And um, like there's so many opportunities and so many sites where you can do this remotely and online, be it with like with people across the globe. So try to do that. And the other thing to keep in mind is like since you're starting your career, like when you're starting your career, like I mean, if you're sometimes you may get projects which would even pay you, and like the start is very rosy, but sometimes it doesn't happen that way. Like you may need to do a lot of work. I mean, not a lot of work, but you may need to start with your first thing, which may even be unpaid. But if you're still a student, it's still okay to get the ball rolling, because it's never a waste. It's a good learning which can be used in the future.
Correct. Sometimes what I've seen is very good students missing out on opportunities because when the job description or the JD comes, it has 8 to 10 points. Let's say I know 4 to 5 technologies out of the 8 to 10 technologies that are required. A lot of students apply and they even get the job. And some students just think that we are not ticking all the boxes, we should not apply. What will we say in the interview? So, what do you think a student should do? What is the sweet point? Like, if you are ticking 50% of the boxes, should you go for it? What should be the approach?
Good question, and it's a very gray area again, is what I would say. So depends on there are multiple ways of viewing it, right? Like so, if you look at it from a student's perspective, obviously there's a lot of pressure on getting something, getting the ball rolling, having an opportunity. There's a lot of peer
Correct.
pressure, a lot of family pressure. There's a lot of pressure from the society. So obviously like there is this thing to get something ASAP. Right? That being said, like one way of looking at it is there is no harm in applying. What's the worst which can happen? The worst which can happen is they would reject my CV, but that's the worst which can happen, right? But the other way of looking at it is if you spam an applicant tracking system or a recruiter with something which is irrelevant, um, like specifically if it's a human being like a recruiter, like when something which is actually relevant which comes and then you send the CV or the mail, like they may not take you that seriously. So there is a trade-off of both, right? And like I said, like I don't think like you can find someone who ticks 10 out of 10. If you meet 50% of the requirement, I personally would say uh, I would not apply because like 50, it's a 50-50 chance. But let's say you meet 70% of the requirement, it's still worth applying. Um, right? And you never know how it works, but I would say like at least you probability wise, if you match the JD at least 70%, it's definitely worth applying, right?
Alright.
And also it's important to read the JD completely as well, because there are a lot of time like also you need to use a little bit of logic in terms of if you're a student, do not go and apply for something which clearly calls out you need 5 years of experience,
Correct.
right? Makes absolutely no sense at all. Yeah, so like apply only for like entry level jobs or jobs which call out saying that uh we're looking at people with who are fresh. Right, do not apply for jobs which even call out for people with, let's say, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of experience, because it's not going to do any good to you. Neither is it going to do any good to the company.
Correct. The market has been really bad lately, and a lot of students or a lot of professionals are trying to switch, or students are trying to get their first job. So, the major concern that they have is how to find this first job. They are going to career pages of different big tech companies. Let's say they go to Microsoft, they go to Google's career page, Amazon, Adobe, Samsung, they go everywhere, they apply there, but they're not getting any reply. So the first part of the problem is I've also heard it from a lot of students. We need referrals to actually make it for an interview, make it into an interview, and they're not able to get that referral. What is the way to get into an interview without a referral? The second part is what is the best way of finding these jobs? Do you have to go to these career pages separately? Or you can have a platform like LinkedIn is also very cluttered. If you've seen the LinkedIn jobs section, a lot of people open their jobs, they hire somebody, but they don't close their jobs. So there are a lot of jobs which are already closed, but the organization hasn't closed it yet. So what is the best way of finding this first job that they want, and how to get to the interview without a ref, or how to
Okay.
get it?
So I want to talk about the referral piece first. So number one, it's not, you definitely don't need to know somebody at any company, be it big or small, to get inside. Uh, it's a nice to have. It's a nice to have thing, and definitely like gives you an advantage in terms of knowing what the company culture is, knowing what the products are, knowing how things work around. It definitely gives you that advantage, but it's not mandatory to do so, because that's not the only thing which people look at. Second, when you look at the word referral, right? My definition of referral is I would mostly only refer somebody like for example, I'm into HR and recruiting. So I would mostly refer people who have either worked with me in HR or recruiting, or who have worked with me. Like it technically doesn't come like as a referral because my job is to recruit, right? But so let's look at it from a head. If I'm referring somebody from HR and recruiting, it would mostly be like when I call it a work referral, it is mostly somebody who I have actually worked with on a project professionally, which means either we were on the same recruiting team together, or we have worked at, let's say, campus hiring, and I was doing some other kind of hiring and we collaborated. But it should be something of that sort, right? Or let's say they were a HR business partner and I was a recruiter at some place and we collaborated on a project. So there should be some kind of work relationship to do a referral, is what I believe personally, right? It's not something that a stranger pings me on LinkedIn and says that can you please refer. I personally like as a recruiter, I would look at it from a recruiting angle, but from a referral standpoint, unless I know the person's work and know the person's character and personality, I wouldn't do it. Because if you were just referring somebody to the company, just like it's like you do not know the risks which come across with it, right? Like you have no clue of the person's skills, you do have no clue of the person's character and attitude as well. So that is my first definition of a referral, right? Like um, my definition of a referral is somebody who you have worked with directly or indirectly on a project professionally. Um, right. And there's another kind of referral which is, hey, you know what, this person was my is my gym mate, or this person plays badminton with me, or this person and me, we go to the same swimming pool or whatnot, or this person carpools with me, right? That's the second level, which is still okay, because while you may not know the skills of the person, at least you'll have some kind of idea of what kind of person they are, their personality type, which is still okay. But if you were like, I'm sure this has happened to you as well, right? And if you like, if you ever go for any typical wedding in India and you tell them where you work, right, there will be some uncle or auntie trying to push their kids
Correct.
maybe to your place, right? Now, again, like most often or not, like it's someone, it's a very distant relative or someone you're seeing for the first time, second time in your life, and they're trying to push the CV, right? So that technically, in my opinion, doesn't even count as a referral, because, like I mentioned, the referral thing have to have that qualification of working together.
Hmm.
So I hope I've made my point clear, like on what a referral is,
Correct.
right? So you definitely don't need a referral, but assuming you don't have it there, you don't know anyone who works in the particular company where you want to work. What you can do is definitely find the right recruiter for the role,
Okay.
right? And LinkedIn, and most recruiters today call out the roles which they are hiring for. Like if you go to my LinkedIn profile, I've clearly called out the roles I'm hiring for, and you can reach out to them. So I'm going to talk about how do you reach out to them as well, and how do you find them. And the example or analogy I'll give for this is very similar to doctors. You have a cardiologist for your heart problems, right? You have an oncologist, assuming you have cancer.
Hmm.
You have an ENT specialist for all of those problems. It's the same with talent acquisition and recruiting, right? Most often or not, like um, people have these swim lines and streamlines in terms of like they hire for a particular skill, like
Okay.
in most likely. So maybe in a smaller setup, what happens is sometimes you have multiple roles. Like if you look at the way I currently work, I don't do only core software engineering. I do a lot of other stuff as well. But when most recruiters are doing this, they would call that out on their LinkedIn profile. For example, hiring program manager, hiring intern, hiring developer, hiring tester, hiring mobile developer, and whatnot, right? So figure out the right person and try to. Okay, first, the step one is figuring out the right recruiter.
Hmm. Correct.
Step two is, okay, you figured out that's the right recruiter. One, how do I get that person's attention without spamming that person? Because keep in mind, that person must be getting a lot of other messages in general for the role, and you're not sure how many of the messages which that person gets is spam, how many are not relevancy. So I would say, like, if you're connecting with this with any kind of recruiter, right, LinkedIn has a good option of add a note.
Yeah. Hmm.
So call that out. Like if you were to connect with me, you can say, hey Rajiv, notice that you're hiring for role X, and you work at this company, like I'm interested in this role, and also tell them why you're interested in this role. Two lines would suffice. Again, example of the Android. Assuming if it's an Android role and you've actually built a couple of Android apps, or you've done some good work there, call that out, share the links. That's how you get the attention. So most recruiters do get that. I mean, they do notice all of these things
Okay.
as well. So this is how you find it out, apart from the career page. So it's also good to apply from the to via the career page, because most companies are not have either dedicated teams to screen these bins in which resumes are deposited, or sometimes like in some companies, recruiters themselves look at these things. While there is an ocean over there, like you also got to take your chances because it is part of the process, right? So
Definitely.
go ahead and apply online, and simultaneously to fast track things, try to figure out who's the right recruiter. Don't go around, like if you know someone can't help you, um, don't go around trying to contact them, or I mean, I would say it is still okay to do that, but it's a roundabout approach. Like most, if you contact me for a role which I do not have visibility on, or I'm not hiring for, what I would do is send your profile to the recruiter who is doing that. So again, it's like a circle which you're taking, which you might as well have I mean, can contact that particular recruiter. So I would say that this approach has helped me personally to get a lot of stuff going in terms of work, and in terms of finding opportunities. So just find the right recruiter. I'm sure they're online, and most recruiters today are pretty active on LinkedIn and do call out a lot of stuff. So that's the way to go about it. And these tricks are very useful, like if you don't have a referral or don't know anything. In fact, I would actually say that I personally, when I mean, while I'm not in tech, but like at least like I think like out of the 5 companies I worked in, like 4 were places where I did not know anyone working over there itself, and it just I kind of sent my CV and it just worked out, or they reached out to me on LinkedIn and it worked out. So I would say that is the approach which you can use to get recruiters' attention.
Correct. The major takeaway for the audience here, for the viewers here, is a referral is definitely a good to have, but if you do not have a referral, you can definitely approach somebody who is hiring for that particular role. And LinkedIn is a very good place to find recruiters. Find a suitable recruiter, message the recruiter, be polite, be professional when you message, and don't spam them because they have a lot of other messages as well. If your message is good enough, if your CV is good enough, they'll definitely uh, hire you for the position that they are hiring for. Uh, all right, so Rajiv, now let's have a look at the resume. So you can just review that resume for us. What are the good things that resume has? What are the bad things? What are the things we should avoid? I'll just share my screen and we'll open a resume on the screen.
Sure, let's do that.
Cool. So this is a resume of a candidate. Can you tell
Okay.
me what's good, what's not good?
So what is good is I like the format and the kind of the way it is designed. The font is also good. It's pretty simple and nice in terms of calling it out. They have on the left hand side, they have written their phone number, email ID, LinkedIn, and location, which is very helpful. Location is also like it is important. It tells the recruiter whether they need relocation or not.
Okay.
The technical skills also definitely help. Right. And if you look at go on top, and if you look at the summary page, this is a pretty straightforward summary over here. But what I would also recommend is if you can call out your achievements, that will be great. Right, along with your summary, any kind of major problem you've solved, any kind of award you have won, any kind of thing which can definitely get somebody's attention. Like I mentioned, right, like what was the problem, what was the solution, what was the result. If you can call anything out over there, that would get the recruiter's attention. If you can come down, yeah, over here again, like this is good. It the roles and responsibilities clearly tell the recruiter of that this person is working on Java and Python, implemented databases, it gives clarity over there. But the only thing is like it doesn't call out like the metrics and the kind of
Correct.
um, problems which have been solved in depth. This is still good. I'm not saying it's bad, but it would be great if you could call out add percentages over there in terms of what kind of metrics and problems you have solved. So apart from that, I find the CV good. I don't see too much of problems over here. The only thing which can be better is adding a little bit more of metrics, but the layout, um, everything else is pretty okay. Soft skills, yeah, I mean, like once you, yeah, I don't think you need to call that out so explicitly today, because all of these things, what are mentioned there, are things which people are taught at college, and most people have this as well. Like all of these points are points which most professionals have, like, by default. So I don't think it's mandatory to call out soft skills, but what you can call out over there is maybe certifications, right? Maybe certifications would help, or any kind of other event contribution or community contribution, that may help. But I would say, like, soft skills, I don't think it adds that much of weightage.
Okay. And one more thing I've seen in a lot of resumes, and I do it myself as well. If there is something important, I write it in bold. Is that
Yes,
something that can work?
I really appreciate that, and I do the same. So, I
Okay.
mean, like, if for me, if I've closed a role which was super critical, super important, uh, top priority, and I really want to highlight that in my resume, I would definitely call it that out in bold. So, yeah, please do call those points out in bold, because that would be very helpful.
Okay, one very important thing that a lot of viewers are very confused about. It's often said that we have to make, let's say, 4 to 5 or 10 companies are visiting our campus. They have slightly different job descriptions, not completely different for a fresher. They have slightly different job descriptions. So, do we make a separate resume for each company, or do we make one resume and go for each company's interview? What should be the approach?
Good question. And from a fresher standpoint, I don't think you can tailor it too much, right?
Correct,
Because let's be honest, let's say there are 10 companies coming and looking at freshers. The reason they're coming and looking over there is that because they want freshers,
correct.
right?
Hmm,
And, like, so you may have like a lot of job description, right? One job description may say Java, another job description may say Python, the third job description may say embedded software, and whatnot. So I would say there are two things over here. Look at what you want to do and what you want, where you want to be, right? See, if your heart tells you that you need to be in technology X, right? And you don't want, and the role is on technology Y, and technology Y is something you don't want to be a part of.
correct,
Uh, One way is, okay, fine. I don't want to be a part of it. I will not apply for it. But there's also a reality of, obviously, I need to get a job soon. I need to get the ball rolling, maybe take this, bite my teeth, and then figure it out later. So it's okay, right? So again, it's a little bit of a gray area. But I my personal opinion, specifically for a fresher, is one CV should be okay.
okay,
Because if you were to make multiple edits on the CV just because you have 10 companies, like, it's a little unrealistic to have like 10 different CVs or even 5 different CVs.
correct,
Maybe once you move a little bit, like, once you have like diverse experience in terms of technologies, or diverse experience in terms of, many people play multiple roles, right? Like people move, like, I personally, in my 10 years, like, there was like a time in my career for 1.5 years where I didn't do recruiting. I played the role of a business admin.
mm,
Right. So let's assume, when and that's actually a real time example. Like, so while I was doing that, I actually applied for a recruiting role, which I got it. So my CV was tailored more from a recruiting perspective.
correct,
But I also kind of interviewed with a few companies for a business admin role, and there, obviously, my CV was tailored from a business admin standpoint.
yeah.
So then it makes sense, but I don't think, it's realistic to expect a fresher to have like different kind of CVs. Max to max, if you want to have two CVs, go for it, but just make sure that, like, you're not lying in any of it. You're talking the truth about it. You're just projecting two versions of yourself over there, but you're not calling out anything fake.
All right. Have you had a look at the job descriptions of these startups? Even for freshers, they have a lot of requirements. So there are two types of companies. There are big tech companies. They hardly have any requirement for the from the fresher. They just want a student who is good in DSA, has basic knowledge of computer science, and that's pretty much it. Even for big tech companies like Microsoft, Google, that is what they expect from a fresher. But when it comes to startups, they have so many requirements that the student should already know these five, six technologies, should have two, three projects in these areas. Do you think it is realistic or it is fair on their part to expect so much?
So again, right? Like, so another thing which I'll tell you is, while a lot of stuff is written, it depends from company to company, honestly. And there is a lot of stuff written, but the reality is, like, I think like both big companies and startups are looking at people who are strong with their fundamentals, because the expectation is that, um, again, you're getting somebody from the college, you clearly know that they have not had a professional work experience before, so you need to teach them that. But you are looking at the basic aptitude and basic skills which they have or possess, which you can groom them into, right?
Correct. Hmm.
So it's like I said, it's always like, if you're passionate about something, you will go and do it. Let's say you're passionate about C++, right? Definitely, like, once you're in college, like, while you're learning about C++, you will definitely be going and maybe doing a lot of other projects on C++, going to many C++ events, open source, and whatnot, right?
Correct.
So, like, what I would say is, like, if you're passionate about something, it's definitely a byproduct. You don't need to be pushed to do it. So you would pick it up that way, and that gives the company confidence as well. So yeah, I mean, and another thing you'll have to keep in mind is, like, if you look at, like you called out startups doing this, right? Startups also, like, like, if you look at it from a startup perspective, they need to start adding value at the earliest and
Correct.
produce a business result at the earliest, right? So it's obviously going to help them and the company a lot, but it's not like startups are going to be unrealistic with their expectations. It's just that they want someone who has the right capabilities, who has the right attitude, aptitude, and skills, and who can start hitting the ground running at
Correct.
the earliest, and who's smart enough to pick up things and work with a team and figure out stuff. So that's the reality of it.
All right. Thank you so much, Rajiv. I think that sums it up. And I think you have answered all the questions wonderfully. And our viewers are going to benefit a lot from these answers. And they're going to tailor their resume accordingly. They're going to approach the correct recruiters. And they're definitely going to get their dream job after they see this. Thank you so much for taking out the time. And it was a wonderful session. I hope you liked it as well.
Hey, of course, Pranjal. Thank you so much for having me here. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I'm happy to do more of these, and glad if this can benefit anyone.